My mom is cheating on my dad and I don't know how to tell him. I borrowed my mom's laptop to send some work emails and saw a message from Chris thanking her for draining him last night. I looked into their message history and found out she is having a full-blown affair with this guy and has been doing so for at least a year. I don't know how to tell my dad. Please, any advice is appreciated. My mom, 47-year-old female, and dad, 50-year-old male, have been together for 25 years, and I could have honestly said that they were the ideal relationship in my mind. They rarely ever argued, always talked to each other, and, I thought, were always loving and faithful to each other. I can even remember in school a few of my teachers telling me that my dad and mom were a great couple and that I should be thankful that I had a great example of what a healthy relationship looks like. They've rarely argued. I can count on both of my hands the times they've yelled at each other. They've always been happy together as far as I know. I needed to use my mom's laptop to send off some work emails as mine was not connecting to our Wi-Fi. I started sending off emails and my mom's messages popped up on her laptop. It was from a guy named Chris and he thanked her for draining him last night. I, not knowing what the hell was going on, decided to open up her messages and I saw that she has been cheating on my dad for the past year at least. The messages they sent each other were extremely explicit and they sent pictures and videos. I started to hyperventilate and realized what was happening. I started to dry heave. I was able to screenshot the messages and send the pictures to my email. After that, I told my parents I was going out for a bit. My dad told me to stay safe and kissed my forehead and I nearly broke down in the house. I was able to drive away for a few minutes and get to a private location and cry. Why would she do this? Does she not love my dad? He's done so much for her, waited on her hand and foot when she broke her leg skiing, moved so she could be closer to her family when she went through PPD with me. He's done so much for all of us and she does this. Why? Dad was always there for her when she needed him and worked overtime to allow us to experience things together. I don't know what I'm going to tell my sister. She's coming back from university next week and she adores our dad. It's also the last thing I want to tell my brother because he's doing his master's and I don't want anything to distract him from his final exams in a few months. It's like I can't tell anyone about this. All of my friends' parents are divorced or were never married to begin with, and they also looked at my parents as what a good marriage looked like. I'm sorry if I'm rambling, I just don't know what to do. Whenever I think about it, I feel hurt. I remember when I was 16 and my mom showed me the love letters and poems my dad wrote for her and they were all so beautiful. He's loved her with all of his heart for 25 years and she's been doing this to him. The last person I want to tell is my dad. I feel as if me telling him will break everything and the dad I knew who was so loving and caring will be gone. I've been told by my friends that it happened to their parents too, that for years they were never the same. My best friend's dad took his own life when he found out about his wife's infidelity. I'm sorry if this is rambling, I'm just so hurt and confused. Why would she do this? How do I tell my dad that the person he's loved for the last 25 years has betrayed him? Please, any advice is appreciated. Update 1. Sorry for the post being so long. It has been a while since I last updated and a lot has happened. Thank you to everyone who responded and everyone who DM'd me with advice and support. So after I got back home, I headed straight to bed. When I was having breakfast the next morning, I was on Twitter, and my mom saw a thread on the Chris Rock situation at the Oscars and we got to talking about it. I ended up asking if she would have or ever had an open relationship agreement with my dad. She shut it down straight away and said she could never do such a thing, and that she loved my dad too much to ever let him sleep with someone else. She then went on for about 10 minutes on how much she loved him and how they were each other's one and only. I wanted to scream at her that I knew what she was doing, but I held my tongue and knew that I had to tell my dad about what I had found out. At the end of the week, I got everything together and asked my dad if he wanted to spend the day with me and go get food and do whatever he wanted to do. He said sure, and that he hasn't really spent any time with me since I started my new job and it'd be nice to spend the day together. I tried to keep everything together, but he could tell something was off. We went to his self-storage lot as he needed to pick up some stuff to bring back to the house. Before we left, he stopped me and asked if I was all right. He said, "Hey, are you okay? You've been really quiet and clingy today. Did something happen with your boyfriend?" I ended up bursting into tears and told him what happened. He asked if I was 100% sure, and I said that I had my laptop with me and I could show him some of the emails I had saved. When he saw them, I could see the pain in his eyes. It was like someone had stabbed him. For a few minutes he was silent and there were tears just streaming down his face. He wasn't sobbing, there were just tears. He hugged me and said, "Thank you for telling me about this. No matter what happens from here, please remember I love you and your brother and sister. You lots are my pride and joy, don't ever forget that." He dried his face and we ended up driving home. When we got back, he told me to not mention anything to Mom and he wanted to check some things before he talked to her about this. We all ended up going to sleep early that night, but I couldn't rest. I kept on having nightmares where the worst happened to my dad. I ended up going downstairs at around 2 a.m. and saw my dad on Mom's laptop looking through her email. I asked what he was doing, and this was the first time I'd ever seen my dad so angry. He turned his head around to me and just said, "That fucking bitch," and left the house. I checked the emails and saw that he had 4 days open. Seeing this has truly killed any part of me that had any feelings for my mom. The days in question were the day my aunt, my dad's younger sister, died, the day after, the day of her funeral, and the day her ashes were scattered. In those emails were my mom asking to meet up with Chris and asking Chris what he was going to do with her when she got to his place. I vomited again and realized that Dad had just left the house and I had no idea where he was going. I got outside and saw he was sitting in the car and he was bawling. He couldn't stop crying. I felt as if this had broken him. After about an hour, I convinced him to come back inside and try to get some rest. I closed the laptop and put it back so my mom wouldn't find out about my dad going through her history. On the following Tuesday is when my dad decided to confront Mom about her affair. I was not at home when it happened, but he sat down with her and asked if she was having an affair. She of course denied this and said that she could never do such a thing, and that she loved him with all her heart. My dad lost it and showed her the emails and yelled at her, phoned her brother to pick her up, and that he was filing for divorce immediately. Mom tried to say it was a mistake and that they could work through this, but Dad isn't having any of it. Since that day, he has not contacted her unless it is through a lawyer. My uncle has come over to the house a few times to get clothes and other things for my mom, and he tries to give updates on her well-being to my dad, but he just shuts it down and says he doesn't care and says that she needs to speed up on getting paperwork signed. As for my brother and sister, I contacted my brother on Wednesday and told him what had happened. I apologized because it was so close to his exams and this is the last thing that he should be worried about. He said that he'd be coming back once exams were over and that I should keep an eye on Dad just in case anything happened. My sister, on the other hand, came back home the day after I told her and hasn't really left Dad's side since. She basically waited on him hand and foot, cleaning the house and making dinner for all of us. I think she's taking this the worse, and my dad thought so too, so he asked her to see a counselor and that he'd be okay. My mom has tried to contact all of us and none of us have responded aside from making sure she had started on the paperwork and was in contact with a lawyer, etc. Dad has said that I should probably meet with Mom soon, as despite all that's happened between the two of them, she was never a bad mom and loved us just as much as he did. So I will be meeting with her next week and I am dreading every minute of it. So now we're all in a weird place where we don't know what's going to happen next. Dad is a lot less like himself and is a lot quieter and reserved, which scares me, but thankfully a lot of his friends and family have been over offering him support. The one funny thing I can say is when I told my close friends about their divorce, a lot of them made the joke that they'd be snapping up my dad once he's back on the dating market, which I can see as being a bit weird but is pretty funny because they admitted to having crushes on him when they were 16. Stupid stuff like that, even if they are jokes, gives me some hope that once this all ends, he'll hopefully find someone who values and loves him like we all do. TLDR, asked my mom if they had an open relationship. Any agreement to see outside parties, they do not, so my mom was cheating on him. I told my dad what I knew, and he ended up searching my mom's laptop and saving the majority of the emails. He then confronted my mom. She denied having an affair. My dad has now filed for divorce, has kicked my mom out of the house, and is going NC aside from through a lawyer. Now let's see what the community has to say. Opinion number 1 says, cheating hurts the whole family, not just the husband, wife. It's hard to trust a parent that cheated because you feel like they've stolen something from you as well. All the best to Opus, their siblings, and that awesome dad. I hope he finds true love. Opinion number 2 says, any hope, and I mean any hope, your mother had of even coming close to reconciling was dealt a death blow from this one thing. Lots of couples do manage to survive the infidelity if shit like this doesn't happen. But that level of cheating is not something that anyone could ever come back from. My guess is that as soon as he read those emails and saw the date, that any love or feelings he had for your mother disappeared in that instance. And so it should, as that is just patently disgusting and disrespectful. Cheating is bad enough. That amount of disrespect is on a completely different level. Look after your dad, Opus, but I suspect that his anger at your mother will take years to subside, if ever. I hope for her sake that she doesn't fight this and just agrees to the divorce. If she pushes back in any way, your father will burn everything to a cinder before he gives her anything. Where Opus replied, "It's been a few weeks since everything happened. I don't know if he's still angry, though he doesn't really talk about it with any of us. He has been spending a lot more time at the gym now compared to his normal schedule. And he's been spending time with his friend who trains boxers and other fighters. I don't know if that is indicative of anything concerning or if he's just trying to get rid of his anger in a healthy, controlled environment." Opinion number 3 says, "It's bad enough she was cheating, but the day your aunt died, the day after, the day of her funeral, and the day her ashes were scattered. That is a new level of low and cold. That right there says she doesn't love your dad anymore. You can't come back from that. Her behavior is so selfish and disgusting. There's a special place in hell for her. Her being a good mom doesn't erase what she's done. I'm just very proud of Oop and their siblings for being so loving and kind to their dad and ensuring he's okay in the aftermath." How about you guys? What do you think? Leave a comment and let's discuss down below. If you enjoyed it, maybe subscribe and leave a like. I destroyed the entirety of my family for only $99. We've all been seeing the recent craze of DNA testing and whatnot, so my dad and I decided to jump on the bandwagon and we bought 2 from 23andMe. We got our results back a few days ago and I went into the DNA relatives section to check out my matches. At the top, it listed my dad as only sharing 29.2% DNA with me and being predicted to be a half-brother, which is impossible. This didn't make sense to me since we also shared a paternal haplogroup and we just looked so alike, so he was definitely my father. My cousin also had taken the test a while back and she shared 24.6% with me, also predicted to be my half-sibling. We're supposed to share around 12%, being first cousins. I couldn't think of a genetic relationship that would explain what I was seeing, and I had doubts about the accuracy of the percentages, so I asked experts on 23andMe. Basically, the shared percentages are extremely accurate and highly unlikely to be false. The only realistic explanation for what I was seeing was that my uncle, my cousin's father, and my dad's brother is my father. Reality hit me in the face like a flying bag of bricks. All the dots lined up and I felt a sense of loss. I sat in my room for an hour just in shock, and then I had a feeling of anger come over me. I needed some fucking answers. Without even thinking, I rushed out of my room and confronted my mother downstairs. My mom is a businesswoman and is often away on business trips. She had no idea my dad and I had done one of these tests since she was away on a trip and just got back. My mother and I never had a traditional relationship. She was always focused on her work and my dad ended up mostly raising me. My irrational self didn't even sugarcoat it. I asked her if she cheated on dad with Uncle David. I have never seen the color drain from someone's face so quickly. She looked dumbfounded and then mumbled, "What kind of question is this?" Of course not. I told her everything, the test, percentages, DNA matches, all of it. Shit hit the fan. My mom fell to the ground crying, begging me not to tell dad. I left her there and went back into my room. I called my cousin, now half-sibling, and told her everything. She ended the call screaming. Dad then came home and stumbled into my room asking what was wrong with Mom. I told him everything too. He didn't say anything after calming down. He left the room and I locked the door. For the next few hours, I heard my entire family fall apart outside my door. My parents got into a heated argument and my grandparents rushed over to see what was going on. My aunt-in-law and David showed up shortly later, and I'm pretty sure I heard my dad and David get into some physical fight. Utter chaos. I feel like fucking shit. I know it's not my fault, but I can't help feeling that this is all because of me. If I had spent my fucking birthday money on something else, none of this would have happened. But another part of me is glad to know the truth. I'm too scared to go outside. I don't even know what the outcome was. The only noise I hear in the house now is the occasional sobbing coming from my mother, and I am sure my dad is out of the house. Fuck my life. TLDR, mom and uncle, both having spouses of their own, fucked, made me, and proceed to not tell anyone. I take a DNA test 19 years later, and it all comes crashing down. I've locked myself in my room and I'm pretty sure my family has ceased to exist outside. Now let's see what the community has to say. Opinion number 1 says, the only person at fault is your mother and uncle. She and him are the ones who cheated and lied. You don't need to feel guilty about exposing their guilt. Also, your real dad is the guy who raised you, not the guy whose genes are more similar. Opinion number 2 says, "Hi OP, what a horrible situation to be in. Tempers are high, loads of uncertainty, and you don't know where to turn. Who do you see as your dad? It sounds like you and your dad have a very close relationship and he is the one who raised you. Don't push him away. Don't ruin a fantastic relationship cause you have found out he is your uncle. He has been deceived in the same way you have. Embrace him and don't let this come between you. Look at your childhood, happy with a loving family. If the answer is yes, then however shit this situation is, they have done a very good job. Don't punish them too much for something that happened a long time ago." Opinion number 3 says, "I have some old people's advice for you if you want. Here it is. This may be impossible to imagine right now, but this may end up being the best thing that ever happened to your family, if only because truth has a way of coming out anyway. Finding it out as you did and inadvertently ripping the lid off of it now, in your youth, preventing anyone from being able to lie their way out of it. Which, as hard as it may be to imagine right now, is everyone's best hope of coming out of this with their relationships and marriages intact, if that's even possible. Including you. It's much harder to take this kind of news at 50 than it is at 19, so you've done yourself a favor as well by getting it over with early. Because of you, your kids don't have to live the lie that you did, and you can be done with this drama in your youth. I know it all seems crazy right now, but you will find the new normal, and it will be okay in the end. There is peace for you in this, though you still have some storms to weather first. Do not let anyone put this on you. Not now, not ever, including yourself, which may be hardest of all. The fact of the matter is that if you hadn't gotten the DNA test, someone else in your family might have, even your own children in the future, ripped open the same can of worms. This situation was not of your making, and your owning it only prevents wounds from healing. Truth is the best disinfectant, and is the only hope of saving these relationships, so don't you dare let anyone put this on you. And if they do, correct them in a way they won't easily forget, because blaming you or the DNA test is not just a lie, it's outright cruel and evil. The responsibility belongs where it belongs, and it may be up to you to remind others of this in the future. Don't hesitate to do so. By insisting on truth, you will be doing the entire family service and bringing the quickest possible end to the drama. Lies only stretch out the agony, and it doesn't matter whose lies they are, so don't own it. Any of it. If you can, in time consider forgiving your mom and bio dad. Shit happens. It just does. And you don't forgive people because they deserve forgiveness. Nobody does. You forgive when and where you can, just because humans make mistakes. You do too, and it's the best way to save relationships. Shit happens. For all you know, it was a drunken one-nighter they've both felt shitty about ever since. And what's happening right now is more than enough punishment, if you think about it. So when you're good and ready, not before, and if it seems right to you, consider forgiving them. As others have said, and I can only reiterate, your now stepdad is blameless in this and has gotten his entire marriage thrown into chaos overnight. Be there for him in any way you can. Ditto your half-sister cousin. You won't regret it. Also, unless you want to hear redneck family tree jokes for the next several years from your friends, be very careful who you tell in real life. I know you need support and people with whom to discuss this. Just be careful. Let it go on Reddit all you like. It doesn't matter, but in real life, you can't put this genie back in the bottle. If it gets out, it gets out. But try to keep a lid on it until you are ready to talk about it, for your own sake. Finally, I have to tell you as an older person that this thing has only just started. You have miles to go before this thing winds down, and unseen changes yet to come. But you're gonna be okay, and so are they. Of all the evils in the world, this is one of the lesser ones, and everyone gets to live at the end. As hard as this may be, try to keep it in perspective, because that helps with sanity over the long run. I wish you well. Good luck, kid. Update. Thanks for the support, guys. Means a lot. Back to where we were. I eventually left my room and called my dad, and he was actually at the hospital with my grandmother. She couldn't handle the situation and had a heart attack right when she went home. I knew my mother was still in the house, but I left her there without saying a word and went to the hospital. I got to the hospital, saw my grandmother, and then sat down with my dad to talk. The first thing we told each other was that this situation didn't change our relationship. He was still my father and I was still his son. I got the confirmation of my dad and David getting into some altercation. My mother had told my dad that she was drunk and David raped her. The only reason she had not told anyone was out of fear of destroying my father's family. Dad then suggested going to the police. She refused and then started to slightly change her story, making my dad doubt her claim. That's when David and everyone else came over. David claimed my mother was lying to save her own ass, and that they had consensual sex. As of now, my dad and I have no idea who to believe. He says his relationships with my mother and David had always been good. He's not sure what to do. David's wife is filing for divorce since this occurred after they were married. My cousin is holding up all right, although she's still pretty shaken up. My dad and I have been staying with my grandparents for the past week until we figure out what to do. Any advice would help. Thank you. Sorry if this sounds rushed. I typed this on my way to class. TLDR, Grandma had a heart attack. Mom claimed David raped her. David denies that. Cousin's mother is filing for divorce. Dad and I are staying with my grandparents for now. Now let's see what the community has to say on this update. Opinion number 1 says, we focus too much on blame. Sometimes it's not that simple. Obviously, OP has no fault. That didn't mean Mom and Uncle Dave don't need some love. They were going to be ostracized and blamed for every problem from here forward. They're humans, and most importantly, that's his mother no matter what. She clearly had his well-being as her primary concern from that point on. Don't let her face this alone, as tempting as it may be. She's already dealt with some of the consequences for 20 years. Now it's hurt every person she loves. There's nothing worse for a mom. Might help Opus to release any guilt as well by properly processing all this. In a fucked up way, he has the power to set the tone for how this goes. Nobody has the right to be more affected than him, so he almost single-handedly has the power to limit the casualties or maximize the rift. Obviously, the choice is his and he's within his rights to do whichever feels right. Opinion number 2 says, hey man, thanks for the update. First off, I think you are awesome for supporting your dad. That's some fucked up shit you are dealing with, so it's good to have someone who is with you all the way, both of you. I'm really sorry to hear about your grandmother, but it is good she is recovering. I am enraged by your mom, unless she actually got raped, claiming to have been really effed up. And since she changed her story when your dad wanted to report it, this feels like she is just trying to save her own ass, as your uncle says. Your dad will need a lawyer for a divorce. And as another person has pointed out, you should both think about seeing a therapist about this. They will be able to help you protect yourself from further harm. If I was in your place, I would also not speak to my mom and uncle. For now, they seem only concerned about themselves and will likely try to manipulate you in some way. I wish you and your family all the best going forward. Good luck. Opinion number 3 says, OP, just going to toss this out there. Mom screwed her bill and managed to keep it secret for 2 decades. For me, I would not be able to accept whatever she says at face value. Now for the heavy part that will hit you sooner or later, and I'm so sorry. Her knee-jerk reaction was to accuse your uncle of rape to save herself, which means she has less qualm with you knowing that you were born of rape than with the family knowing she had a drunken tryst with her bill 20 years ago. Once it calms down a bit, you'll start putting pieces together and probably be able to figure out who is telling the truth. Another thing to consider is that she likely didn't know which man was your bio dad. Your dad never had a problem knowing you were his, but that's only true because he was screwing her, too. She hoped never to be found out, and until OTC DNA would not have been. Never, ever blame yourself, and don't take any crap from any family member who might try, including her. You were curious about ancestors. She screwed her bill, big difference. You betrayed no one and had no idea that you and the rest of the family were victims of liars. Don't think I'm letting dear old uncle off the hook. He did this to his own brother and in many ways made the deeper cut. His default position was supposed to have been to help his brother, support him, and defend him. Instead, he helped himself to his brother's most sacred relationship. Didn't care if he destroyed it for a piece of fun. Then, just like Mom, lied for more than 2 decades. And, BTW, Uncle didn't know if you were his or not but was okay with a man he was willing to betray and raise you as his own. A real piece of work, that one. Never trust this uncle with anything precious to you. The reason I fall on the side of rape did not occur is because victims of rape exhibit symptoms and rapists will have more than one victim in 20 years. The man who raised you has always been and will always be your dad. In your earlier post, you wrote that your relationship with your mother had been non-traditional. Welcome to her club. So it is with all of her family members, it seems. She has no loyalty to anyone but herself, not even her child. Never, ever blame yourself for their choices. You have this one life and can control only your own actions and your own emotions. Nothing binds you to accept responsibility for another person's behavior. Be true to yourself and those you love. That's who you are. Peace, warm hugs, and love to you, your dad, and Grammy. This is a wild story. How about you guys? What do you think? Leave a comment and let's discuss down below. If you enjoyed it, maybe subscribe and leave a like. It will help my channel a lot and motivate me to make more for you. Thanks for listening and take care.